Do you believe that paternity testing should be mandatory at birth?
Desperately trying to find my daughter Shardae's father.
You are not.
Woo.
You are not.
Paternity fraud has arisen in my life as well. You know, I didn't meet my biological sister until I was in my early 20s. Most shocking reveal.
A woman came on to accuse of a guy being the father of her twins, and the result was that he was the father of one, but not the other.
You have saved more black men from damnation than Abraham Lincoln. You dropped that iconic line.
How long is your podcast?
As long as I feel like it.
That was iconic, right?
Are you kidding? First of all, you react the best. You have the best reactions.
Thank you. I'm humbled. I think your reactions on Maury Show was the best reactions. All right, well, I am super excited to be having this conversation with you here today. And to be honest with you, it is just surreal, right? Like, so listen, we grew up.
Don't tell me that you grew up watching me.
Come on, we did.
Pretended to be sick and bad. And you didn't let your parents know what was really going on because you wanted to stay home and watch the Maury Show. So is that what you're going to tell me?
No, listen. I used to watch you all day, all right? And I got a couple of questions for you as well, you know? But let's not even act like you're not a legend, all right? Let's not act like that, okay?
Okay.
So listen, for everyone that's watching right now, listen, for over 30 years and over 5,000 episodes, Maury dominated daytime television with The Maury Show, one of the most iconic programs in talk show history, all right? The man turned DNA results and lie detectors into complete cultural events that still shape media today. But behind all of the viral moments is a real man, a real journalist, all right? Someone who's interviewed presidents, tackled serious topics, and built a legacy that most people in media can only dream of. And now, in 2025, he stepped into a whole new lane with a podcast, which is how we originally connected, right? And it's called On Par with Maury Povich. And before we get started, huge shout out to my community because you guys have been tagging Maury. Maury, have they been bothering you?
No. Well, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, the whole thing about, my wife and her social life when she was an anchor in Los Angeles and the people she messed with, whatever, that, this was almost 50 years ago.
It was a minute ago, right?
And some of the comments were, that I was upset. Upset? Are you kidding? I mean, all I can tell you is that my wife was the best, and back in those days, I mean, we were just dating, and I was just surprised at who she was socializing with, and I had no problem with it. I mean, are you kidding me? It was so long ago.
Yeah. So it's so long ago, but also too, have you found that, having both of you guys are legends within media, within journalism, have you found it more difficult to, I guess, have a relationship or a marriage as long as what it has been with that particular job that you guys currently do, a career that you guys do?
Well, believe it or not, the fact that we were both in the media business, it really helped our relationship because we understood what was going on, and the fact that there would be many times during our marriage that we weren't around with each other because she was off globetrotting around the country and the world covering stories. And I was doing a talk show, and sometimes I would be traveling and I would be very busy. So I think it was the understanding of what the pressures were about our business that really kind of made it work. And I think there would have been more peril if one of us wasn't in the business.
Because there'd been a lack of understanding.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because I was married before, and I readily admit that I spent too much time worrying about my career than I did about the family at home, and I think that was a big problem the first time around. And I think with Connie, it's been a great relationship of understanding and love, and we're just growing old together.
Hey, listen, I understand and I hear that, but let me also ask you, so I assume that you saw my clip. What was your first reaction, or if Connie saw the clip, what was you guys' first reaction after seeing my commentary over you guys is going back and forth?
I had no problem with that. I mean, first of all, I give you credit because it's quite a unique atmosphere that you've created for yourself. I mean, I know a lot of people on podcasts and things like that, but they didn't do it in a way that you have. And I love the fact, I love the idea of you commenting on people's videos, and I think it's, fair game. And the only thing I kind of resented was the some of the comments that people had about, saying that I was upset at Connie. I've never been upset at Connie in my life.
Well, I think also too, with me,
I shouldn't say I haven't been upset.
Right, ever, right? That's not true, Maury. Come on now, we know that, right?
Not about what she was doing in Los Angeles in the 1970s. That's
right.
For sure.
Right. Yeah, because you said it was non-exclusive at the time. So, but I think people have missed you so much, Maury, and I think commentating over that little bit of clip. And then people saying, oh, we didn't even know that Maury was creating more content. And then they went over and people started subscribing and checking you out. And I think
thank you. And I want to thank you for that, because we got some of your subscribers on my on Par podcast. And so I thank you very much for the promotion. It's terrific.
You're absolute welcome. But listen, we've all missed you within this time. So it's good to see you just having real relaxing conversations. So we get to see the man behind the mic. Because like I said, so many of us grew up with you.
I know. It's very interesting. It doesn't matter what I've done in my life, whether it be the talk show or whether it be the journalism career before. It was always couched in the feeling of being a storyteller. That's what I have been all my life. And I, on the show, those are stories that I reveal and the guests reveal on the show. And it's just another form of storytelling. Right. And I've been able, over the years, MTR, I mean, Lord knows I've had a lot of criticism from media people over the years that I was exploiting these themes with the DNA testing and the lie detector testing and out of control teenagers, that I was exploiting them. And I rest my hat on this. If I can get a father, a man accused of being the father and proved to be the father in the child's life, that child has a better chance. If I can have people come on and pass lie detector tests where one significant other thinks they're cheating or lying, and they prove that they're, so be it, so they can stay together. If I can get an out of control teenager, wants to run the streets at 13 and 14 years old, wants to get pregnant, things like that, and I can turn that child's life around, so be it. You want to call me exploiting that particular theme? So be it. I don't believe it. And the best part about it is, MTR, I was on for so long. 20 years later, I bring these people back. Right. And find out, how did that teenager turn out? How did that father get into the life of that child now that the child was 20 something years old? Right. And so, you changed lives. I rest my hat on that. Yeah. Right. And let me, and by the way, most of the viewers realize that. Yeah. Can you talk, because I want to pivot, because I want to get into your storied career, because a lot of people are not that familiar with it, right? But can you talk through that? Because it's something that I deal with as well, right? I have my message, I have my movement, I have the things that I want to try to accomplish. And I know within my heart of hearts, what I'm doing is for the betterment. But how did you cut through the noise at the time? Because you had tabloid here talking about, this is like a bad. How did you cut through the noise? Maybe it's because I had a thick skin. I always believed that whatever I was doing, it had a silver lining, and so I just didn't care, because I knew my guests knew what I was doing. I knew my viewers knew what I was doing. I knew my live studio audience knew what I was doing. By the way, was there entertainment value in those shows? Absolutely. Did people go crazy because the guy proven not to be the father jumps all over the stage, or the unfortunate a woman in the situation runs backstage and collapses on a couch? Okay, that's part of the deal. It was real. It wasn't staged. It was very interesting. Jerry Springer was a dear friend of mine, and we've known each other ever since we started the same year in 1991. But Jerry really understood the difference between my shows. He would say all the time, Maury, you're the real thing, and I'm wrestling. I have wrestling. And he knew it. And he had no problems with it, because he was kind of like the innocent bystander in all of the activities that were going on in his show. But he knew the difference between my show and his show, even though that if I'm on the street sometimes, people would say, hey, there's Jerry Springer. Oh, really? Really?
How dare they, Maury? Right, yeah. I the nerve of them, all right? How dare they confuse you, all right? So listen, I want to get into your shows, but I also really wanted to get into your history as well, right? So because many people recognize you from the 30-year career on the Maury Show, but many don't know that you began as a serious news journalist in the 60s. Right. And I mean, I've seen photos of you with Muhammad Ali, Maya Angelou, former presidents. The stories that you covered are simply a part of history, right? So can you talk me through some of those early years? What were they like, and what are you most proud of? Well,
it started a long time ago. I started as a radio news reporter for about 4 years in the very early 1960s. I was there at Andrews Air Force Base when Jackie Kennedy came off that plane in that bloodied suit, and her husband in the coffin coming out of the back of the plane. That was probably the first big story. Although I covered the Martin Luther King March in August of that year. Strangely enough, it was my assignment was to cover the counter demonstration against King and his followers at the other end of the mall. The American Nazi Party with Norman Lincoln Rockwell, of all people. And there were more cops than there were demonstrators. That was my initial foray into the news business. And then I graduated into television in 1966, and I was covering, of course, the riots after Martin Luther King's assassination, Watergate, the anti-war movement, and all the demonstrations in Washington. And so I thought, well, and I was doing talk shows in Washington too, and I thought, well, maybe am I going to make it nationwide or not? I mean, can I go to the networks? Can I work it somewhere else? And so I worked in Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Philadelphia, all within a 7-year period. I mean, I always felt like I was Ulysses, this odyssey of going all over the country. In fact, a friend of mine wrote a big article in Esquire magazine that he had seen me anchoring the news on 4 successive St. Patrick days in 4 successive cities. Whoa. He said, my friend Maury Povich is trying to go nationwide, city by city. And finally, I went back to Washington, my hometown, and then this crazy Australian named Rupert Murdoch buys the station group and calls me up in 1986 to come to New York to do this crazy tabloid show called A Current Affair. And that's where I kind of made my bones. I mean, that's where first national show. And for 5 years, it became one of the biggest shows in the country. It kind of changed all the news gathering in network newscasting, because we were doing stories the networks weren't doing. All these crazy stories, Joey Buttafuoco and Jim and Tammy Faye Baker and all these crazy stories. And the next thing I know, our ratings are huge. And so all of a sudden, all the network news organizations were doing the same stories because they wanted the ratings that we had. And then the talk show started. And That's my goddamn history.
And that's all she wrote. So you've interviewed presidents, you've done these crazy stories, you've
Sure.
covered real
Yeah. You
policies.
know, you
So mhm,
mentioned somebody who was so dear to my heart. And and as
mhm,
soon I really haven't thought about her in so many years, but she used to come on my show, my local show in Washington, many. Maya Angelou
mhm,
was maybe one of the most important guests I've ever interviewed in my life. I mean,
mm,
she was just an amazing person, and
mm,
especially her background and how she started and how
mhm,
she was running the streets.
mhm.
And
Yeah,
and then she became the embodiment of one of the great storytellers and poets there is.
yeah, absolutely. Did she ever share any words with you at that time that,
Oh yeah.
kind of went into who you were at that time and maybe
Well, I
forging
mean,
your path forward?
it was the time of the civil rights movement, and when she used to come on, and uh, all the events of the civil rights movement in the '60s and early '70s.
Mhm,
She gave me something that I've always carried, and that is, she gave me a sense of respect.
mm,
She gave me the respect when I didn't know if I deserved it, and she
mhm.
they weren't interviews, they were conversations, and that
Mm.
was, that's the
It's different.
greatest. I think that's the greatest tribute there is to an interviewer is when you end up having a conversation with someone rather than an interview.
Yeah. Absolutely. And also like, you've come from a time period where, right, you were creating content where there's only a couple of stations, right? This is before the
Right.
internet, right? And
Yes.
now we're in a time period with, the internet has infinite stations and infinite options for people to pay attention to. Do you ever miss traditional version of media?
Well, I do only because of the disinformation
Mm,
that is so rampant. That's the problem. It's the
yeah,
disinformation, and because of all these outlets, you're just bound to get it. And
right.
people ask me all the time, "What's the future, for instance, of news?"
Mm,
And I said, there's a future. People are always down on it, and they're always upset because it's just not as good as it used to be. But there is one part of the news business that is right, and
mm,
it's local news.
mm,
Think about this. Your local news stations, your local news outlets, your local web outlets,
mhm.
whatever they are, people are still interested in what's going on in their neighborhood.
Right.
And whatever is being reported is pretty fair, pretty objective, pretty close to uh, an objective view of an event that is happening.
Right.
And so, therefore, to me, the future of news is all local.
Mm. Isn't it funny how that happens? I think that, now that we seem like we're in a world where we just chase clippable moments, viral
Right,
moments, titles,
right.
headlines, and I guess sometimes what is chased, people are just chasing the virality versus, the truth of it. So it leads me to ask, at least at the mainstream level, it almost feels like the soul is just lost. It's like it's just big business. But what you say is
Right.
that more on a local level, that's where
On a
where
local
really,
level, that's
yeah.
that's that's where there's going to be a great respect
Hmm.
that the viewer, the resident, the citizen, the local citizen is going to have for that local outlet.
Great.
I think
Great.
that's the future. I
Yeah.
mean, to me, we used to say it a long time ago. All news is local
Mm. There you go. Did
because
you ever go ahead.
everybody thinks of how that's going to impact their own lives,
Mm,
whatever it is.
mm. Now, when you started out, did you ever think, as a journalist, that your name would eventually, inevitably just be immortalized in pop culture? Like, was that the plan all along?
It is. It was so far from my thoughts. I mean, first of all, all my biggest dream was to be Walter Cronkite, and that was snuffed out
it.
real early when I
early.
made this big odyssey around the country trying to make it at various cities. I knew that wasn't going to happen. My wife got it. She ended up sitting in half a Walter Cronkite seat. I never came close to that. But I am amazed at the reaction I've had over the years about the show and what it meant to people. I have had NFL players tell me they'd be in the locker room. My show is on in the locker room. The coaches are up on the field. They want them to get on the field. They won't come on the field until they find out who the father is.
Listen, Maury, I'm gonna be honest with you. You might be the first like clippable viral. There's something special about where you feel like you cannot walk away until you know the answer to this question.
Exactly.
I've never been gripped until I saw the Maury show, anything on TV.
Shaquille O'Neal used to tell me, Shaq used to tell me, he'd watch it all the time with his friends, and they have bets as to whether the guy's the father. They would bet. And I said, money? He says, big money.
Big money. They were betting cars and stuff. And listen, and sometimes, and I want to ask you some specific questions in regards to the Maury. We'll get in there in a quick second. But but let's just go on and begin to chat about the Maury show and its impact. So a lot of people don't realize that the Maury show didn't start out at first with just lie detector test and paternity test.
No.
Can you explain exactly how the show came to be? And also, when is that first you are or you are not the father episode? And did you know that it was gold?
So my show started in the 1990s. People are around in the 1990s. You have to understand, it was the golden age of daytime talk shows. Yep. There were no less than 12 of us. There was Oprah, and there was Phil Donahue, and Geraldo, and me, and Montel Williams, and Sally Jesse Raphael, and Jenny Jones, and I could go on and on.
I remember them all.
We all had shows. And we all had shows. And my show started out, and it was kind of I don't want to say tame, but it was a normal daytime talk show. I would do news events. I went to Waco, Texas, to do a whole week on the Branch Davidians, that crazy cult down there, and all the problems that they had, and the gunfire and violence that ended up ending that saga. And then I went to Nashville to do a country music show for an entire week. And then 7 or 8 years in, the producers of my show said, we have an idea. I said, what? He says, well, we watch soap operas, and we see these themes on soap operas, and they're played out 6 months in advance. I said, what themes? It's, well, like DNA. Is this guy the father of this child? 6 months in soap operas before they find out whether he is or isn't. We've got a DNA deal, and we can figure out in 12 minutes whether this guy is the father or not. I went, oh boy, this is different.
Yeah.
This is different. So we do the first show, and I think this ended up being the key to it. We did the first show, and the producer and I we do all the research on the guests and everything. And my producer, right before the show, briefing me, and she says, and the result, and I said, I don't want to know the result. I don't want to know anything more than my guests, my live audience, my audience at home. I don't want to know anything more than they know. And so that whole inflection of you are the father, you are not the father, is a real surprise for me, because I don't know anything more than the rest of the people know.
Wow.
And if I had to say one thing about, not that I'm smart, but I think I know that it's good for a host not to know anything more than the guests, because I would skew the questions, because I know something more than you know, and things. I'm as surprised as they are.
Right.
And it worked.
You were the original reaction channel, right? We got the reaction channels up on YouTube. You were the original, Maury. you taking us back. So I guess
we had these phobia shows on. when these people
Oh, they're
were
scared of like balloons and
scared of balloons,
Yeah.
pickles,
I remember.
clowns, olives. It was just crazy. It was crazy. And you talk about clips on YouTube, my Lord.
If the Maury
Millions and
show,
millions.
if there was, can you imagine if there was like clips and shorts and reels back when the Maury show was making things as it was happening? Oh my gosh, like
Yeah,
because they
that's
still
right.
go viral today, 20 years
If
later.
YouTube was back then, oh my
Oh
Lord.
man, that
Instagram back then, jeez.
Holy moly, it would have been crazy. So, okay, so 8 years in, then you do the first DNA test.
Right.
I guess, did you know right off the bat? Like, did the ratings just go crazy right after that? Or like what was the discussion?
Took a month. It took a month between DNA, lie detectors, out of control teenagers. Took about a month. And then the ratings pop. And
Yeah.
they said, so people used to tell me, well, how come that's all you, how come that's, I said, let me tell you why. That's where the ratings are. I mean,
That's what they're watching. Right. That's what they watch. Yeah.
I'm going to go to the well as long as I can.
Come on. Tell them, Maury.
And that lasted 25 years.
Yeah. That's a big well.
In fact,
yeah.
MTR, let me tell you, the repeats that are on now are doing just about as good as the originals did.
That's insane. Timeless. Yeah. It's wow. It's just a testament to, because I think about that as well. I get some people like, hey, why don't you do content on this or content on that? And I always have to do the risk versus the reward in it, that, of the things that I do, who is actually going to watch this? It could just be one person asking you to do it. But meanwhile, generally what people want to see, and then you just perfect on how to do it.
Look, I'll give you compliments with your content. I've watched it. Let me tell you, it's your reaction that makes it happen.
Thank you.
It's not the content itself. It's your reaction.
I appreciate that. So also tell me, was there ever an episode of The Maury Show that you refused to air?
Well, way back, I didn't air anything that had to do with religion. I just didn't like that. I didn't like Geraldo had an unbelievable show one time on racism, and it really it got well out of hand, and there were punches thrown and things like that. So I never allowed the show to get to that.
Right.
I would never ever, if I can't remember if there was ever a time that there was any kind of bodily harm on my show, because first of all, my security guys were great, but if there was, I would have never shown it. And I know Jerry would have shown it, but I would never have shown that. I mean, any kind of violence is verboten to me on television, because people take it out of context, and next thing you know, things happen. So
things happen. Yeah.
Never did that.
Yeah. Similar on, this platform, there's content guidelines that is deemed inadmissible for advertisers. So
what is that?
So there's just certain rules, like, you can't show blood, you can't be, have overtly sexual topics. You can't show violence or anything like that. So, so we have to live up here to the content guidelines specific to, what are advertisers most likely to put ads on. But then also too, I completely understand you from like a social morality perspective. There's certain things that, you may or may not want to cover, depending upon the context that you can wrap it up in. So I completely understand. So
and there also used to be a criticism on the show, because when I used to bring a woman back over and over again because they could not find the father of their child, and I know you've commented on this and things like that, and you can take two attitudes to that. What kind of a woman is she and things like that, or else I took the attitude of, she's showing courage. She has to go on a nationwide show and say, I don't know who the father. I want the father of this child in her life or his life,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll just suffer the humiliation of coming on again and again and again to do it. And that's I always thought of that as bravery and courage, and forgave the fact that she was with all these guys at a certain time.
I actually have a clip that I wanted to show.
Sure.
Do you mind entertaining this clip? Because it's based off of this, because I wanted to ask this question too. Let me, within the context of this, I want to show this real quick. All right, let's go.
Desperately trying to find my daughter Shardae's father.
You are not. Larry, you are not. Not the father.
I'm just trying to make it through here. I'm trying to find my baby daddy.
You are not. You are not. Not the father. You are not.
Woo.
You are not.
He got punishing me. I don't know what mistake I made, but I think he punishing me.
In the case of 4-year-old Shardae.
Get up.
Will, you are not.
Man.
Dion,
You are the father. Get him to where the baby that
you are not.
All right. So let me pause it right here. So Maury. All right, let's chat about this. So it's been 20 years. All right. Even after the 11th paternity test, I mean, and this is some of the feedback that I gave as well. I was just like, man, to still be consoled. I get what you say when it comes from a bravery perspective. But man, first off, I would think that these would mostly be situations in private, but then to be on the 10th, 11th one and still coming on the show.
That's when I thought that they were courageous, because they had to bear that kind of humiliation in public.
Whew. Yeah, that's a lot. So when stories like this, you would still go back, bring them on if they eventually found, the father.
And at time, and sometimes they did not. And at other times, some women did. So, I can only say that we finally helped some, but not all.
Okay. I used to love the recap episodes to see, how did the story, kind of turned out. But let me also ask you, I guess, more or less from a media perspective, right? So I would notice too that, the young lady that would come by, let's say for the 5th or 6th test or something like that, there was always like being able to console them. And, I always thought it's not to hold them to a degree accountable, right? But also, even though, potential fathers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 would come through, oftentimes it seems like unless they were just down to be the child's father, they would also be booed as well. Can you talk through some of the reason for that?
Sure. I mean, I know of many cases when I proved that this guy was the father after he denied it, and he'd say, well, I'm not getting in that child's life. I ain't doing that. I ain't doing that. I got my own life. I'm not doing it. And I got really pissed. I reminded him that this child is not going to have as good a chance unless he got into it. He didn't care. He didn't care.
Yeah.
And so, I criticized him, and then he would get booed by the audience, because the audience knew, the live audience knew that 2 parents were better than 1.
Yep. Yeah, and I think in this the conversation of whether or not the father knew or did not, and then it's completely different than if the father then knew and said, I don't want to be in that child's life. And on the flip side of the coin, you would also have fathers that either wanted to be in the child's life and the mother was like, no, I don't think that you are the father, or the father just didn't know. And I sympathize with those men who wanted to be the father and were proved not to be the father. Because heck, they were ready to take
they were ready to take the challenge. They were ready to take
Yeah.
a child on. They wanted to. They probably had a connection with that child.
Yeah, very, very true. And this specific topic has actually reigned true within my life as well, because paternity fraud has arisen in my life as well. I didn't meet my biological sister until I was in my early 20s. And that was not a decision that my father had anything to do with. He just didn't know. Right. So, that's why, when I look at these cases and seeing the work that you've done in order to try to unite families, be in favor of two-parent households, it is so important. And there's so much within our society today that sort of denigrates the idea of two-parent households, right? The importance of a mother as well as a father. So to have this show that was like, let's find this out. Right. And I was actually looking at statistics not too long ago that said that of contested paternity cases, about 10% from this birth clinic came in, about 10%, it came out that it was the incorrect father. Right. So I guess
there are 10%.
Mm-hmm.
New York Times did a survey years ago. 10% of the kids in this country are with the wrong father.
That's frightening. That's terrifying. I guess off of the back of that, do you believe that paternity testing should be mandatory at birth?
Oh, I never thought of it. Some people would get offended, I'm sure. How dare, of course that's my child, But I'll put it to you this way. It should always be made available.
I agree.
I don't know if it's mandatory, but it always should be made available. If there's any doubt.
Yep, it should be made available. I kind of think like, if there's a process that epidural can be made available, there should be also a process where, a cheek swab should be made available. But I think component of the process is that to just, sign the father that's at the hospital name on the birth certificate, and that's presumed to be the father legally, at that point forward. So it's very interesting. I guess a component of the answer to the question is that if it was mandatory at birth, that component of the Maury show may have never happened, because that would never been a question.
We'd be out of business.
But that 10% rate would be down. But yeah, so good. So good. Also on the idea of, things that people saw within, I guess, backstage things, right? Was there anything that would always happen behind scenes or backstage of the Maury show that the audience would never know about?
Well, I don't. We always had a psychological person on staff who would help if anybody or any guest needed the help, and we were there. There were some crazy moments. I mean, I had people running not only off the stage, not only out past the green rooms, but outdoors. I mean, gone. I mean, they were just gone. Poor cameramen were trying to follow.
You had to work on your cardio for that, right?
They'd run out of line. They'd run out of rope. They couldn't get to them.
Right.
And there was a lot of that. I'll tell you one thing. It's very interesting. It just came to mind. You were in Atlanta, okay? So Tyler Perry, who I have a lot of regard for, has his whole studio in Atlanta, makes movies and everything else. And one of the Medea shows, one of the Medea movies, the theme was that they didn't know who the father was, and they wanted me to come down, and Medea was going to come on my show. And Tyler, I mean, he first of all, he watched the show a lot, so he knew. He absolutely recreated my entire set.
Wow.
To the point where there was a sofa backstage. Then when Medea found out it was she ran off the stage and collapsed on the couch, and I mean it was unbelievable. And I give Tyler credit for making it as real as possible.
That's awesome. Hey, listen, you got to stay true to the source material. All right.
Right.
So also too, and I kind of deal with this as well, is that sometimes, the content or the things that you're doing can kind of get to you. But so what did you do? I know you said that you had psychologists backstage for the guests, but
Right.
what did you do to prep for dealing with so much intense personal conflicts on a daily basis?
I mean, it's interesting. I always thought people came on the show because, frankly, they thought they could unburden themselves in my presence, and that I afforded them a safe space.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to think about why people thought of me that way, because it didn't matter whether you were black or white or Hispanic, or it didn't matter who you were. It didn't matter what your social strata was, where you fit socially or economically in the country. But if they were going through this, not in my life.
Right.
And so I tried to think about why they felt the connection. And I think it's more than anything, it's just a human instinct that I had of them and that they had of me. Whether you call it humanity or whatever. Other than that, I have no idea why they trusted me, but they did. And I think the greatest part of it was that the audience knew that.
Yeah.
That they knew that I could get through to these people in some way, and that they could get through to me.
Well, I think it speaks to the genius of your relatability. And I think that people, they want truth exposers, and you would expose the truth. And I think that especially at that time, I think DNA testing was probably only a thing. Paternity testing is only a thing for maybe a decade and a half, maybe at that time, maybe 2 decades.
Yeah.
So to have it exposed, people are like, we could just go and we can figure it all out. But I will say, it's actually funny that, it doesn't matter the race, creed, color, or religion, but I will say that you have saved more black men from damnation than Abraham Lincoln.
I'll tell you, that's very good, because actually they did that on Saturday. They used that line on Saturday Night Live one time during Black History Month.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, they did. They had my face, and the guy said, "Why would I have this white guy behind me in Black History Month? Because he saved more, because he freed more black men."
Come on.
Since Abraham Lincoln.
Come on. Listen. We got to give credit where credit's due, Maury, all right? so
that was a good, oh boy.
Yeah.
I had more, there are more takeoffs on me. South Park did a brutal episode on me, and it was really rough. And it was interesting because I wanted to call the creators of South Park. And I get on the phone. They won't answer. Mm-hmm. Finally, after a couple of weeks, they answered. I guess they were afraid that I was pissed off at them. Mm. I said, "No, I'm calling you because could you send me a few of those original cells of the cartoon? I would love to put them on my wall."
Yeah, you got to immortalize stuff like that. That's awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
But that speaks to the tough skin that you have. Yeah, because they can be brutal, to say the least.
They really were something. And I give them credit. Yeah, it's okay. Look, I'm out there. If you want to just tear me up, go ahead. So what? Yeah.
So what? As long as you're getting your message through and whatever you want to accomplish. So
sure.
And I guess to put a pin on it, for all of the people that used to give you, so much crap back into the day, into the show, tell them, what is the difference between, exploiting drama versus exposing the truth?
I think it's a fine line. Mm-hmm. I think you have to have an end game in terms of what you're trying to do. As I've talked to you about justifying everything I did. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have that, then you are into exploitation.
Yeah. So let's run a speed round real quick.
Okay.
So I'll say a phrase, and then
Yeah.
you tell me the first guess or moment that pops into your mind. Most shocking reveal.
When a woman came on to accuse of a guy being the father of her twins, and the result was that he was the father of one but not the other.
Whoa, that can happen.
I never thought it could. I looked around at the staff and said, "What is this?" And they said, "Fraternal twins, 2 eggs, 2 sperm."
Whoa. Mic drop.
They said it's a million to 1 shot, and it came in twice on the show.
Most dramatic chase backstage.
Oh wow! It's like it was about maybe a quarter of a mile outside. I mean, it was just forever.
There was wireless mics back then?
Well, it wasn't the mics that were the problem. It was the cameraman who had the camera on his shoulder.
Yeah,
who ran out of rope.
Gotta be.
They were gone.
They were gone. They just ran out the block to stop signs.
And by the way, I've had it both ways. I've had the woman run out, and I've had the guy run out when he was proved to be the father.
Skedaddled. Whoa. The one guest that you will never forget.
It's not the unforgettable guests. It's the guests I've never had. You know what I mean? I mean, I always used to say to myself, I'll put it to you this way. I will still come out of retirement. I'll come out of retirement to do the lie detector test between Nicki Minaj and Cardi B. I will come out of retirement.
You heard it here first. We got to get Maury back on. Come on. We got to. Is the studio still open? We got to figure it out, Maury. Come on. Why don't you think, that the lie detector tests, DNA tests, there's like no one has tried to duplicate that.
Well, they've done some talk shows have tried to do it a little bit, trying to find out, was there a reaction in the ratings? Mm-hmm. And I don't want to blow my horn, but nobody has done it the way we've done it. Nobody has been able to do it.
Okay.
And I think after a while, they just kind of gave up on it.
Listen, it's difficult to imitate the original, right? They'd have to make it better. And if they can't make it better, then they go the other way.
I want to talk to you about podcasts.
We can chop it up. We can talk about podcast commentary.
So I just started this podcast, and I thought I was going to be like Johnny Carson, where when he ended his show, he never appeared on television again. And then
pop up
just when I thought I was out. That was just when I thought I was out. They dragged me back in to do this podcast, and I like it. I love it, and I think because our guests, it's a myriad of guests. From comedians to sports people to I had Barbara Corcoran from Shark Tank on. I had Gary Vee, this big entrepreneur. I've had all these different people on. And in fact, this week I have Andre Drummond, the great basketball player for the Philadelphia 76ers. And so I think we still have something to offer.
Listen, it's, I will say, Maury, nobody knew about it. This new media is just so different, so that's why I'm honored to bring you up here to spread what it is that you're doing.
I think one of the problems is that how many people have podcasts? Thousands, right?
Saturated, yeah.
It's unbelievable. So I think the more I can talk to people like you who've been so successful at this, then maybe we can have people, I don't want to spoil you. I don't want to spoil your market, but I'd like to just attach myself to you. Let's see what happens.
Maury, listen, I do so many stories, and I'll be honest, Maury, I was thinking to myself, man, wouldn't it be awesome if I had Maury as a correspondent, right? I do a piece of content, flip over to Maury. Maury, what you think about this? And then you come up and give you, I would absolutely love that. Oh, man, I would do that. Oh, I would ask.
You show, yeah, I'll react the way you, are you kidding? First of all, you react the best. You have the best reactions.
Thank you. I'm
But,
humbled. I think your reactions on Maury show was the best reactions, but that's neither here nor there. But I would love for you to be able to come in. Oh man, we could
sure,
tag team.
I'll do some corresponding for you.
Oh my
Hell, I
gosh.
started as a correspondent, for Christ's sake.
Oh man, well listen, we got to go back to the roots, Maury. All right, we're gonna have some
There you
fun
go.
with it. I'm gonna find some good ones for us to be able to react to.
All right.
So I know your first guest was your wife Connie, and I really wanted everyone. Yeah, and I really want everyone to watch the entirety of the content because I actually think like some people, and you dropped that iconic line.
How long is your podcast?
As long as I feel like it.
Really? Okay.
When is this podcast gonna end? Wherever I feel like it, right? Like that was iconic, right? So, but I think to just watch you in that format, people have not seen you like that.
I know.
But it's just so real, so relatable. And to see, a relationship that is a marriage that is 40 plus years in the making, and to see this sweet, endearing kind of back and forth, people want to see that from you.
And it also allows me, with all of my guests, to talk about myself.
Mm-hmm.
I had this long discussion one time. I was talking to this Barbara Corcoran who was on Shark Tank, and we were talking about getting fired. And then I talked about when I used to get fired in this business. Mm-hmm. And I used to say, how about this, MTR? I figured out why people are so fearful of being fired. And it's not the act itself. It's you don't know how you're going to feel when it happens. It's your feeling of because you think you're just going to lose everything if you're fired. Are you kidding? That's the worst humiliation, embarrassment that there is. And I found out that when I was fired from a newscast in a station one time, that I still had both hands. I still had both feet. I still had everything going. I laid down on a couch for a couple of months, and I said to myself, and I'm watching everybody do the news, and I'm going, I think I'm as good as these people. What is all this? So if you overcome the feeling of when it happens, you've got it licked.
And
so those are the kind of things I can talk about on this podcast.
And that's the human element that is the new media today, right? Because you don't know what it is that you say long form that's going to have a major impact on someone else that might be going through the exact same thing. I get emails so often about something that I said, and I'm like, when did I say that, right? But it could just be something, and you can spark something in someone and motivate them to do something that they didn't even think that was possible within themselves.
Right. And so that gives me the luxury. Think about this. Did 31 years of talk shows. Nobody knew anything about my life,
right?
What I went through. And now, because of this medium, I can do it.
Do you have a wish list of folks that are coming up? I know you said that the one this week is Andre Drummond. Do you have a wish list going into the future of people that's just like, okay, I gotta have them sit down?
I tell you who I'd really love to have on. I'd love to have Charles Barkley and Shaquille O'Neal on. And let's get this thing over about whether they like each other or don't like each other.
Let's figure it out. Lie to talk to test, right?
But there's all kinds of stuff going on. I would love to have them on. I would like to have, believe it or not, my old time golf buddy, who has kind of stayed out of the spotlight ever since he left the presidency, George W. Bush. I'd like to have him on because I really like the way he's conducted himself since he's been president, and the fact that he is not involved in this political craziness that's going on. And so therefore, I'd like to talk to him. I don't know if he'd come on or not. I'd like to get a lot of good actors on that maybe. In the old days, I used to interview Richard Pryor. I used to interview Gene Wilder. I used to interview all these older actors and those who aren't with us anymore. I interviewed. How about this? I interviewed Steven Spielberg when he was so young, when he was going around the country promoting Jaws. And so I had him on my talk show in Washington, local show. because they all came through. And he looked at me and he said, you know, you have an interesting face. Have you ever thought about doing something? And I said, you don't quite understand, Stephen. This is my only act. I got no other act but this.
Well, you got to have him back on, you know? You got to talk about the career.
I'd love to have him back on.
Yeah.
I'd like to have George Clooney on. I mean, I met him once or twice, and so I'd like to have him on. I'd like to have Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm fascinated by him. Yeah. Aren't you?
Absolutely fascinated by him. I mean, I used to watch Joe Rogan back when, you know, it was like episode 10 on just like, I think it was like Apple Podcasts, and to see what he's developed it into now is just, it's absolutely insane. You know, but it's this new media, it's this new podcast media. But Maury, you know, I would venture to say that any of these people that you would reach out to would be like, yeah, I'd love to be able to come in and have a conversation with you.
I think, I might have some pull there. I might have a little juice.
Yeah, I think you got a little bit. I think you got a little bit more than a little bit. So good. So yeah. So, you know, also too, it's called On Par, right? So you golf.
Yeah, On Par. Yeah, I golf a lot, but it's kind of a double entendre. It's like you're on. It's a golf term, but it's also being equal. You're equal with me, and we're going to talk about that. And so it's, you know, it's fun, but it's good to be with you, MTR. Please,
thank you.
Reach out. I'll be glad to take in some of your content and react to it.
Listen, I'm going to reach out, trust and believe, but thank you so much for joining me. I had so much fun in this conversation with you here today, Maury, all right?
Great.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Right.
All right, guys. We're not done yet. This is being recorded a day after the Maury conversation, and I wanted to come back, not only give you guys an official sign-off, but also talk through some of the things within the Maury conversation, and as well as give you guys a call to action, all right? First and foremost, shout out to Maury. Shout out to Maury. I still can't believe Maury Povich came on here and we had an amazing and awesome conversation. You know, he said so many things within this that I'm going to work to institute within my own life, right? Add within my own toolkit, my professional toolkit going into the future. And I'm so appreciative that he dropped so many gems that I think that was value add for everybody that was watching the content here today. So again, guys, link down in the description box down below. Go and check out his podcast. He has some amazing guests up there, and they're having real conversations, all right? Link's going to be right in the description box of this video, all right? The next thing is, I have to say again, shout out to my community. Shout out to the MT Army. Shout out to the MTRers. Thank you guys so much for going over to Maury's page. This conversation took place because of you. And that's the power of you. That's the power of community. All right. So within that, who else? Who else should I be having conversations with? Guys, feel free to write down in the comment box down below of this video of who else that, you know, you think that I should make outreach to. Who else do you want to see me having a conversation with? You know, even in reflecting on the conversation, there was maybe one or two other times that I've really done interviews, but the last time that I've done one was probably 2020, right? That was a long, long time ago. So within my mind, I guess I kind of forgot the value of having these long form conversations, right? So I want to have a little bit more into the future. So guys, let me know. I mean, you can even go on their pages and write down that I should have a conversation with them. Maybe some of them will hit me back. So, all right, guys, let me get up out of here. Let me also know in the comment box down below, did you enjoy the conversation? And I'll see you guys soon. Until next time. Peace.